story. Chris Dorner told his story how he did everything right when he was in the military and symmetrical war on the LA Police Department and their families. That's an ominous thing to say. And he did it. This motherfucker ambushed two police officers who were just sitting in their squad car, murdered them. He went to another police officer's house and killed his daughter. Boy, it was terrifying. And this motherfucker was on the run. He was doing it. I was supposed to do the Grammys. I was supposed to present at the Grammys that week. And a guy from the LAPD called me and said, Mr. Chappelle, we understand you're coming to Los Angeles. And I don't know if you know, but there is a lunatic on the streets who is killing police officers. And we would like to know if we can pick you up at the airport. We're extending this courtesy to everyone he mentioned in his manifesto. And I told the police, I'm fine. I read the manifesto. He likes me. Is there anything I can do for you, nigga? Because I'd be very worried.
Yes. It is the Castworthy Podcast back at you. I am Big Steve, a.k.a. Last of a Dying Breed on the Twitter machine. I'm joined here today by EJ the Savage, the Sophisticated Savage, and the VP of Research. Well, he's just the VP right now. He don't research shit no more. He said till we put him on a payroll of some sort, till he gets a W-2 from us, he ain't looking shit up no more. So here we are, gentlemen. It is Sunday, June 14th. Black Lives Still Matter. How you boys doing today, man? You guys feeling energetic? VP got the clean up there.
Got the nice, got the fresh cut there, buddy. Marine.
Quarantine clean.
Look at him. Look at him.
Yeah, you don't look like Denzel and He Got Game no more. You look real homely last week.
Jake Shuttlesworth.
Right. What's up, man? How you doing, VP? All right. Well,
back at it again.
Hey, listen, we are joined.
When are you going over there to establish his cable connection, his internet? When are you going over there? The man, the man's been asking you, come over there, help him out. What are you doing, man? What are you doing?
Listen, man, you would think that he's in Africa on another continent or something. The way his shit be dropping out, like that shit crazy.
Yeah, he's definitely in the barracks right now.
That shit, yes, I think it's user error somehow. So yeah, it's Sunday, June 14th. We're here. We're waiting for VP to jump back in, but as we wait for VP to jump back in, we're joined today by a guest who is on the other side of the law, the side that we're unfamiliar with, generally down in South Florida, spends a lot of time in the inner city with, the minorities. And so welcome to the show. He's a listener, and he wanted to join us so that we could set it straight, right? Set the record straight on what really should be happening, and help people understand that all officers, deputies, etc., are not bad. So, AP, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You have been in law enforcement 14 years approximately?
Yeah, a little over 14 years.
Okay. Spent some time in the military, right?
In the Marine Corps, yeah.
Okay. So your story leading to becoming an officer isn't much different from most of these other people that are out here killing people, besides the fact that you grew up in the inner city with me, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, in the hood, right?
Yeah.
So, give us something, man. Set the record straight, man. What is it that's what's being missed? What is it that's being missed that people don't understand?
I think what people don't understand is that, a lot of times these incidents happen and everybody likes to look at the negative side of it. But, there are, for every one bad incident, there's 100, 200, fantastic incidents. But unfortunately, it's just like anything in life. You can have 1,000 attaboys, but the one fuck up is the one that everybody focuses on. So, the unfortunate truth is, the incident with George Floyd, it was bad, and I know many of my friends that have been in law enforcement for many years, they all said it's bad too, and they don't agree with it. Because, at the end of the day, the old saying of, you are who you keep, your friends who you keep. So it's just like, being a cop, you're guilty by association. But, in reality, it's like, no, everybody's an individual.
Got it. So, welcome back, VP. So it sounds like you said something similar to what VP said. You could sleep with 1,000 women, but you suck one dick and you're a dick sucker for life.
He kind of said that.
Did I get that wrong, VP?
Wow.
He kind of said that.
Yeah, that's definitely wrong. It's so hearing that, it definitely made me think of that saying that we used to say in the Marines of, you could build 100 bridges, but if you suck one dick, you'll always be a cocksucker. And
Yep.
The thing about that I would like to ask about is listening to what you were saying about how there are tons of things that are happening in the law enforcement world that are positive, and the interaction with the community that goes right, that arrest that goes 100% by the book, and there's no violence, no one is hurt, there's no viral video on Facebook, etc. Those things are happening daily, and I don't doubt that. But the thing that concerns me about police is when we do see these incidents that do go viral and cause these moments that like we're having currently, is a lot of times it seems to be like this wall of silence, or like this kind of rallying around the flag, if you will, around the cop. And what I mean by that is that, like you said, in our first attempt, leaning on someone's neck and things like that is not something like, it's not the way that you guys are trained, right? So the officers that are around watching these kind of things happening, why don't they step in and kind of police their own and say, hey, that's enough, back off, stand down, we got him in cuffs, let's throw him in the car, et cetera, et cetera. It seems to be that not only do you have those bad apples who are, going excessive and way outside of the book, but you have people who are acting as bystanders and allowing this stuff to happen, which then gets us to these moments here. So why isn't there pushback from the colleagues who are in law enforcement?
Well, again, this was one incident that you're describing, but there's many incidences where the good cop does speak out. And unfortunately, the system, the policies, the unions, all of these things get involved. And, a lot of times, you'll have a good cop that speaks up, reports the incident. But unfortunately, when they do the investigation, you have to look at criminal, did the person violate any laws? And then second, did he violate any policy? I can tell you, having worked in Orange County and Orlando in those streets and having been a supervisor, many a times, you conduct an investigation on a complaint, so a good cop comes up to me and says, hey, this other guy, he did this, he said this, and I think it was wrong. It crossed the line. So now I call you as the citizen who had that interaction, and you're like, you know what, whatever, bygones be bygones. He's an ass, so whatever. I ain't got nothing to say to you. You know, I ain't talking. So it's harder for me, and it's harder for the good cop to actually throw the red flag, you know, on the bad cop when, you know, there's when you're conducting the investigation, you know, into that abuse. If you don't have cooperating people, I mean, what can you do? You know what I mean? And that happens more times than you know, where the person's like, no, I'm not going to talk to the cops. I ain't going to say nothing. You know, you already know because you're here. You already know what happened. So just do what you got to do. And it's like, well, I kind of need your statement. And then they'll be like, well, you ain't going to get nothing from me, whatever. You know, and it makes it harder. It makes it harder. You know, I know friends that were on scene, guys in handcuffs, and, you know, a police officer, deputy sheriff abuses his power, strikes them, and they say something. And I've seen those guys get fired and charges pressed against them, you know, for that battery, for that assault, because it's just something that doesn't get condoned. But again, you know, for the many times that people do speak up, you don't hear about it. You don't hear about it because, you know, it gets handled internally, and that's it.
Well, I guess for me, in that instance, you know, when things go right and they get handled internally, great. You know what I mean? That's great. Like, I work in correctional field. I've been in various areas of this side, if you can say. And, you know, we're doing our job. You know what I mean? It ain't a lot of people in civil service positions, whether you're a social worker, a nurse, whether you're a cop, that get pats on the back for doing their job. You know, that's the good stuff. The problem is, you know, and I'm not saying you agree or disagree. The problem is there is a larger issue with police in this country. And the reality is it's racism. We have a lot of these officers that are wearing the badge. They're hiding their true intent, which is racism. When you have these incidents like George Floyd and you're killing a guy, literally killing a guy, there's no other explanation that can be said other than we have a police problem overall. We have too many guys. One too many guys not doing their job is too many. And the issue now, if you go back historically, it's been logged, it's been documented how many times people have been killed or these different things that shouldn't have happened. The thing now that's bringing it to light is social media. We have a brother that was just killed in Atlanta on the 12th, confronted, you know, not operating the vehicle, not not even warranting the arrest and all of these different things. And we see how this situation escalates. And oftentimes it's a white officer that's involved with a minority. There's even times where you see officers attacking the minority undercover plainclothes officer simply because he's one male. You know, we know there are good people that do their job, but the issue is not those people. The issue is we have a larger problem with the racists and the guys that intentionally don't want to do their job. And what we need to do as a country, and what we need the blue line to do as a whole, is have some measures in place to hold everybody accountable. Because the way this country is operating, once you have a badge, you pretty much are untouchable. And you're getting these people getting fired now. They're getting fired, but the loss of life, though, the loss of life, right? When you got guys that are doing 25, 35 years for crimes they committed as juveniles and things of these natures. And when we find these cops to be guilty of what they're doing, why is it not swift justice? Why is it not real justice? The officer in Dallas got 10 years when that whole situation was dirty. 10 years? It's not enough. Being fired, it's not enough. It's just not. It's nothing to be said. Like, the law is the law. The letter of the law should apply for those in uniform and those not in uniform.
No, and I agree with you 100%. But again, you know, when you're looking at, you're talking about, you know, the punishments that they're getting, you know, that's beyond the police officer doing his job. That's another topic. You know, when we're talking about, you know, what's the problem, you know, a lot of times I'm not naive to sit there and say that racism doesn't exist. You know what I mean? But a lot of times it's not about because you're racist. A lot of times, you know, we have to look at the bigger agenda. Like Steve said, you know, in the beginning, you know, I grew up in the inner city with him. So I understand how to create dialogue. I understand the mindset that the individual is going to be in when I encounter them. So it's incumbent upon me to ensure that, hey, when I have that dialogue, I got to dummy it down. I got to level it down to a level where the person is gonna create that dialogue and not be hostile with me, you know. But let's be honest, you know, nowadays a lot of people like to talk about that, you know, cops, all you need is a high school diploma. Well, that's not true. A lot of these agencies now require a college education, but you know, who's getting the college education? Is it, you know, the majority of the inner city people? No. You know, the people who are getting the college education and are applying for these jobs, you know, may not have lived in the inner city, may not have had that exposure. So now they become cops, and then you throw them in that atmosphere, you know, and let's be honest, they're going to try to go out there and do a good job. But now you got that one guy who's, you know, been arrested 5, 6, 10 times, who always have negative encounters. He's going to right off the jump treat this young cop like shit. And that's the perception, and that's the mindset that you're building into this new cop. I'm not saying it's right, but we have to have better engagement, better training, you know, with the neighborhoods that we work at. Even myself and many other cops that I know that grew up in the inner city, you know, once you become a cop and you start making a little bit of money, you don't live in the inner city anymore. So most of the cops don't even live in the neighborhoods that they patrol. So that's also a problem, an issue, because you know what, they go home to their neighborhoods, and then they have to work in the hood, in a violent crime, high drug, you know, area, and they don't know how to deal with it because they're like, how do people live like this? Why do people live like this? And it's a battle that they might have internally in their mind. And even me, coming from Bridgeport, you know, grew up with Steve, you know, sometimes you do go into certain areas of the hood where you're like, yo, this is crazy. I can't believe, you know, you allow yourself to live like this, you know. But again, you know, my method, every time I hit the streets, my method was, people talk at me, I wouldn't yell back. I just talk monotone, like, listen, have you ever met me before? No. So why are you yelling at me? Talk to me. I'm here because you guys call me to be here. So talk to me. And then 99% of the time, people will just calm down and talk to me and apologize for being rude. And we get the problem solved. But unfortunately, you know, we see it on all these police videos. You just got individuals that are just running high, and all they're doing is, you know, shut the fuck up, sit the fuck down. And, you know, I believe, just like you guys, just like anything else, you know, law enforcement is a customer service job. You know, we have to go out there to provide a service to our customers, you know, but at the same token, you know, I want to say, one of you guys mentioned it in one of the previous episodes, is at the same token, it's like, I didn't sign up to just get shitted on either. You know what I mean? You're just like, I'm still a man behind the badge and the gun. So if this is the first time that you and I are having this interaction, you know, treat me with respect. Aside from the badge and the gun, treat me with the man-to-man respect, and then let's solve the problem together. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen a lot of times.
So I guess we've talked about this multiple times. This is like our 58th episode, right? We've been around for just over a year, and we've seen this way too often, right? And the killings of Black people by police, and we've had these conversations. It seems like every other episode or every 5 episodes, we're having these conversations. So clear it up for us, right? I think one of the things that we talk about, you made mention to it, people policing areas that they're unfamiliar with, right? Do you feel, one, that that's a large issue, and 2, right, how do you, as an officer that came from that area, if you're paired with somebody, or if you know somebody that's joined that came from, you know, the burbs, you know, are you proactive? Are people like you that came from, you know, the inner city proactive in talking to these people and saying, hey, this ain't a country club. Like, this is how we need to do. Like, and is there ongoing training to help with this?
I mean, yeah. When I was a training officer for many years, I used to always ask the guys, you know, like, you ever been punched in the face? And then be like, huh? You ever been in a fight? You ever been punched in the face? And then be like, I would get some that would be honest and be like, no. I'm like, all right, so my goal before you leave me during your training cycle is to get you punched in the face. And they would look at me like, and I'm like, because I need you to understand that the job that you're doing is beyond a paycheck. You know what I mean? You're just when you get out of the car, 50% of the time, the person you're going to interact with hates you. And you have to understand that. And if you don't understand that, you know what, this is real life. This is not just a paycheck. You know, the worst thing that a college kid can say is, hey, why'd you become a cop? Oh, because it's a good career and it's a steady paycheck. That's a bullshit answer. You know, unfortunately, there's a cliche, you know, the sheriff's office that I used to work at, on the side of the patrol cars used to say, making a difference. As cliche as it sounds, you have to want to make a difference. You have to care. It doesn't matter if you work in the hood. It doesn't matter if, you know, you work in a nice neighborhood. You have to want to do positive work. You know, even if it's one person at a time, one kid, one adult that you can have a positive interaction with, you know, then it changes the narrative, you know, because now that person can say, yo, I've come across 10 cops and one of them treated me like a human being. So if I can be that one and I can change the narrative, then that's what you need to do. You know, I had a young guy that trained with me. He was a Mormon kid. Didn't grow up nowhere near the hood, you know. The only, you know, had very, very, very little interactions with black people. Guess what? He went to BYU. You know, the only black people that he mainly interacted with were the athletes at BYU. Then he did his mission in South America, you know. So guess what? What was his exposure to the hood? Next thing you know, he becomes a cop. And where is he working with me? In the number streets on OBT in Orlando. You know, I'm sorry, that's a culture shock for a lot of these kids. And it's not an excuse, but again, it's incumbent upon me. It's incumbent upon those guys that, you know, that have worked those neighborhoods and have those positive relationships with the citizens to train people and to educate them that, you know, there's people from different walks of life, and, you know, what's a priority to them may not be a priority to you, but at least show them that you care, you know. And I think that the human side of the job sometimes gets lost in the everyday, you know, going to work and you know, robbery calls and shootings and this, that, and the third, that when you go handle that simple burglary and the lady's crying because, you know, to her, they stole her TV and her DVD player and this, that, and the third, which is all she can, you know, to her, it's important. To us, you know, we look at it, it's a TV, you can replace it. But no, you know, be compassionate, you know, be empathetic to their needs and to their loss, and again, provide a service to them, be there for them, and have them feel that, you know what, damn, I called the police officers, you know, to report this crime, and they cared. They took the time to be there with me and walk me through the steps, instead of just treating them just like another citizen. All right, sign this, let me get your statement and let me move on. You know, we have to have a little bit more cognizance of what people are going through, because, you know, everybody has personal issues, from millionaires to poor people. You know, it's just how we deal with them.
VP, you got something before I go in?
So,
Okay, you can. Let me say something though, because you're absolutely right, AP, and the culture shock, the training, all of these things, right? But again, if we don't realize if we don't really understand the part that racism really plays outside of that, we will continue to miss the mark. It's one thing to get broken in. It's one thing to have the rigmarole of your job start to weigh you down, beat you down. There's human error. There's human feelings. There's, you know, you're bringing your personal. We get all of that. But when we have these incidents, bro, where Walter Scott is fleeing the scene,
is that the South Carolina incident?
And he's shot in the back.
That was disgusting
and
too.
Shot in the back. But this is what I'm saying. And if we don't look historically in this nation, right? There's documents, there's evidence. West Virginia, a whole class of correctional officers. Hail Hitler, Nazism, all of these things. So it's like anything else. Like I can't expect you, and this is what we're not trying to do. I can't expect you to speak for those, especially those that are not doing the right thing. It's just like I can't speak for the young kids in the hood today that are doing crimes and doing things that I would never have done the way they're doing them. But the reality is racism is the elephant in the room. This is what separates people from having the humanity, doing the right thing, to walking the line. When you shoot a man retreating in the back 8 times, there's nothing to be said from that. And then when you dig up these guys' history on Staten Island and these cops, Staten Island, which is a extremely racist area where there's continual race wars till this day. You have these guys and you look up the history and you see the incident after incident after incident. And historically, the NYPD going back to the 70s when they used to call a precinct in the Bronx Fort Apache because they dealt with the natives. Going back to the establishment of the law enforcement and some of our first police agencies where they were highly racist. Black cops couldn't even dress or work in the same space as officers of another ethnicity. So we haven't addressed that. We know that there's human errors. We know that there's culture shock. We know that there's fear. We can't take that away from you guys. Okay. But if we don't really say that racism is a large part of the problem, 90% of these incidents, because when you go and you look at these guys' jacket and you see it, when do we as a country and as a culture and as a blue line say, if this is who you are and we find out and you did what you did, it's over for you?
But it unfortunately, like, again, this is what I'm trying to say is, like, in 10 years working in Orlando, like, I've seen it. I've seen cops get fired day in and day out. And these things don't make the news. There's a lot of things that go on that don't make the news, and if it made the news and people were informed, like, hey, we internally investigated this guy on a simple complaint, and this is what we found, and we just terminated him. And a lot of times the state do pick up charges and press charges, then people will be more comforting in knowing that, the police agency is doing something. But again, things don't come out to the open until something negative, until something media worthy makes it on the news. I had this conversation previously on the phone with Steve. One of the good things that Florida has is the Sunshine Act. So everything is a public record. If you want to know, about this incident, about that incident, you can go down to any police station, any sheriff's office and request that information, and they're going to give it to you. You know what I mean? If you want to know, hey, what happened with this investigation, you can go down there and pull it. And that's the type of view that I want people to understand is I want people to be informed. I don't want people to make decisions and have opinions based on what they see in the media. Go down and read the internal investigation, see what was said, see what the witnesses said, and understand why certain decisions are made. I sent Steve, I don't know if Steve got it, I sent him a link of a guy that I didn't work with him. We weren't on the same squad, but we were in the same sector, and he got arrested. And, it was disgusting, illegal pursuit, beat up this like 16-year-old kid, like straight pummeled him. Okay. And all those cops that were with him that night, they all spoke up like, yo, they tried to stop him. He punched another cop in the face, and they did their job. That guy got fired. He got charged, and he's serving prison time now. You know what I mean? But guess what? That was a blip in the media, a blip. You know what I mean? Because the media didn't, oh my God, look at what this cop did to this kid. And he messed this kid up. The sergeant was demoted, and the sergeant ultimately retired, And I mean, there's things that do go on where good cops do speak up. And it happens more often than people would like to understand happens. The unfortunate truth is that policy, like the union contracts that they get into with these police departments, every agency, every union contract is different. Every single one. The policies, the Orlando Police Department has policies that vary from the sheriff's office. So then you have the differences in why is, OPD doing this and why is the sheriff's office doing this? You have agencies that have zero. When I was with the Orange County Sheriff's Office, we didn't pursue unless it was a forcible felony, which is an armed robbery, aggravated assault, a shooting, but you have other agencies, they can pursue for whatever. It's liability. It's how you minimize the risk and you don't look bad. And people need to understand that. So to the outsider looking in, it's like, oh, look, I'm a victim and the sheriff's office ain't doing nothing. Well, no, it's our policy, but conversely, then you have the other agency. Why did they chase that guy? It was just a traffic stop that he didn't want to stop for. You know what I mean? And now he got in a car accident and killed a family. We have to hold every agency accountable to their policy, and there should be one standardized type of rule, one standardized type of policy that every agency has to abide by. Because if every agency sets their own standard, again, you can have a county sheriff's office have a different standard than the city, the city police departments that are within the county, and if everybody's not on the same sheet of music, a lot of disparity happens, and a lot of these disgusting things happen. Again, I'm not making an excuse, and again, I'm not saying that racism may not play a part in it, but there's a bigger thing. How do we end the racism within the department? How do we end the racism within our country? I mean? It's hard. Like, there's not a click, a switch that we can just say, boom, racism ended, or, oh, you're a racist and I'm not going to hire you, because
it's not easy. But what I'm saying is it's not easy, right? And you're an anomaly because you're saying all of the right things. The problem is the guys in your sector, the guys in the departments, the multiple people across the country that won't address this. That's the problem. If we don't have more people in blue behind the badge, willing to be honest, willing to be truthful, willing to do the right thing and say that it's an issue, we won't even get there. We can't. This is my point. Like, I get all of those things, but until we really make it a focus to say, hey, we know training is a problem, we know this is a problem, but hey, let's really highlight that racism has been the problem for years, and let's all together collectively admit it, and let's start talking about it more so that we can start to do it and fix it. You can't fix something you don't acknowledge doesn't exist. That's the problem.
But a lot of times too, there has to be accountability with law enforcement. There has to be, but at the same token, there has to be accountability within the citizens that we're trying to police. Because if the moment, I've been called every name in the book. I've worked with black officers that got zero respect and they got called crackers. You know what I mean? Because they chose law enforcement as a profession. So is it right? No. So is there some type of prejudice in this? Is there some type of racism just from the black community to anyone who wears the badge? Yes. So, we have to fix ourselves, but, we can't hold ourselves accountable if everybody else is not going to hold themselves accountable either. You know what I mean? I can tell you, when I was with the sheriff's office, I got sent to a training. It was like a 2 to 3 day event in Tampa. It was a big conference, policing in the black communities. You know what I mean? Guess what? 75% of the people that were sent to this training were minorities. Don't you think that's doing a disservice to the white officers? You should be sending the white officers to go to a conference and speak and interact with the local minority groups to understand the issues that they go with and make them aware of, the social and the cultural differences so that they can be better cops. But if we're going to create a conference like that and half or more than half the cops you send are minorities that already understand, you're doing a disservice to the other cops in the community.
So the question that I have then is, in addition to all of that, is going to be, what is it that you guys are encountering? So you tell us that you had black officers, and maybe that's what we're missing, right? Because we're only seeing what's put on social media. We're only seeing what the news is showing us, right? So on your side of it, you gave us a little piece of it. You're getting disrespected and things of that nature. And what's the difference between you being able to cope with it and react accordingly, and somebody else not being able to do it, right? So, an example, these riots, right? We're seeing and protests, right? Protests turned riots because whoever's starting them, whether it's the protesters, whether it's other people coming down and starting them to make us look bad. When I know you went out in South Florida and you had to practice some crowd control. So what kind of stuff were you guys faced with that, might have caused these other officers that we've seen the videos of them pushing a 75-year-old or pushing a woman to the, to the ground or whatever the case may be?
A lot of it is, man, again, it's that mutual respect. You know what I mean? If you walk up to the police and the police tells you, hey man, step back, listen, we're walking in a group, step back, just listen, man, stop being so confrontational. You know what I mean? Stop being so like, oh no, you can't tell me what to do. I'm here protesting. Listen, again, it's a mutual respect thing. We can't sit here and go back and forth as no, well, you're wrong and I'm wrong. And, no, it's, listen, there's a job that needs to be done. There's a lot of videos that I've seen of police officers and of National Guardsmen that are at these riots, and, they're mumbling under the breath and people are recording them saying, I'm black and I'm proud and things of that nature. Don't forget and don't let for 1 second go by and think that a lot of us minority cops out there agree with the protest, but we still have a job we have to do, because again, that's our job. Don't think that, I think one of the biggest things is if I interact with a black person, he doesn't want me to treat him with disrespect because I've dealt with a bunch of hood black people. So likewise, don't disrespect me because I'm a cop and you've had negative encounters with the police. Everybody's different. There are good cops out there, and there just has to be an even keel. If I disrespect you, then you by natural law have the right to be upset and get, raise your level, your tone, or whatever the case may be. But, let's start off on an even keel. There's been many a times, man, I'd be out there, and I'd check out with a guy. Cool. The whole interaction is cool. Like, what's up? What you doing out here? Oh, man, like they used to say in the streets in Orlando, man, I'm 1054, man. I'm good. I ain't got no warrants, whatever. You can run my name, this, that, and the third. That was a positive interaction. I ain't got no warrants. I ain't got nothing on me. Here's my ID. Look, you can check me. I'm good. But I have to check myself and understand if he's being nice with me, I shouldn't disrespect him, but it's an OG, the times are different, Steve. Like when we grew up, it's different, than it is now. Like now,
AP, I gotta jump in. And you're talking about the accountability and the community and the mutual respect, right? I get it. And the other thing is, we talked about the incidents that we don't see that aren't publicized when guys get taxed and they get fired and they get all of that. But I think now I guess the question is, if we didn't have social media, we didn't have exposure and body cams to all of this stuff, and we see where things go wrong, what would be happening if we didn't get the exposure to some of these things? What do you think would be happening, and why are these guys doing some of these things that they're doing? Like the Walter Scott situation, that wasn't a training issue, right? So what's the underlying problem with a lot of these incidents?
Well, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because like when I became a cop in 2006, smartphones didn't even exist, man. People still have flip phones, Nextel was the thing. I was issued a pager, and I was issued a pager, as my response, and I had a personal, flip phone. I think honestly, the social media, the camera phones have actually, personally, in my personal opinion, I think it's made the problem worse, because now you have individuals that pull out phones, and because they're recording, they show their ass on these recordings. Fuck you, you can't do shit. Ha 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 ha. But back then, before that shit happened, they wasn't saying that. You know what I mean?
But if that does happen though, right? We have interacted, we know we've interacted with the law on both sides, and there's a level of respect, right? So if somebody gets detained or they get arrested for violating the law, cool, go to jail, face your time, do whatever happens. But again, what we're capturing, right? We captured a dude, and I go back to South Carolina because there's so many different fine instances, right? With Eric Gardner, you could say, well, he's 6'5", whatever, he's resisting, even though chokeholds were banned already, this guy made a bonehead mistake. Okay, that could be one side. But when you got those ones that stand out, and this guy is running in retreat and he's gunned down, right? If we didn't have the exposure, how would we ever know that this guy who shot this guy was a problem? And then where is the root issue? Because there is no training, there is no culture shock, there is no explanation for shooting a unarmed retreating man in the back like a dog and then suffocating another one with your knee. There's no what's the underlying issue here? We talked about training, we talked about culture shock. Where does it become something else? What is the difference here?
So I think you're for me anyway, how I'm understanding the question. I mean, you're kind of answering your own. You kind of know it's individual accountability. Like if outside of training, right? Outside of social media, what the difference is the individual. You know what I mean? Again, you can't sit there and say that it's cops. You know, outside of training and outside of being recorded or not being recorded, it's the individual that makes that decision. You know what I mean? You know, I've been in situations where I have been in a fight. You know, me and another deputy been in a fight with a guy, and that guy grabbed or attempted to grab the other deputy's gun. But guess what? You know, I've been in those situations, and that guy, no shots were fired that day. But I think in retrospect, it wasn't because I didn't, you know, because I remember vividly pulling out my gun. But at the end of the day, you know, the situation, the tussling back and forth, I didn't want to risk hitting my partner or, you know, the mom who was in the house at the time. You know what I mean? So it's individual. Again, it's individual accountability. You have to understand, I don't care what law enforcement agency you're with, you know, even in the military that Vardy can attest to, you know, we have to understand our backdrop. You know what I mean? You can't just shoot just to shoot. You have to understand if you miss, where's that bullet going? You know what I mean? So a lot of times you see videos, you know, and from a police standpoint, like I cringe because we were like, oh, you see this cop didn't shoot, you know, and why all these other cops are shooting? Well, you know, sometimes you see the video where the cops are just like, put the gun down, put the gun down, put the gun down. That cop is going through, you know, emotional responses in his brain where he's afraid to discharge that gun, where you can watch the video and be like, man, if I was that cop, I would have smoked his ass. You know what I mean? Again, it's individual accountability. The individual officer decides to take that action. You know what I mean? And, you know, again, and when we're looking at the other cops that are in the vicinity, a lot of times you have to go look at that internal investigation report to see what they said. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times there split second decisions that are made that, you know, another cop can't stop that. You know what I mean? When it comes to shootings, another cop can't stop that. You know, I got sent a video, you know, from another cop. I got sent a video of a police shooting in New York. And it looked like two Latino cops fighting, tussling with this guy, and they shot him. You know what I mean? And the guy reporting is like, yo, they just shot him. You know, and why didn't that make the media? Like, why did I have to get that video sent to me from another person 4 months after the incident happened, and yet no one's talking about it? It's not in the media. You know what I mean?
Why do you think so?
Because personally, because it doesn't fit into the racist narrative because it was two Latino cops.
I did see that. That video. Are you talking about the one? I think I recall that one where it was like in the
They were
Bronx
fighting.
and
They were
they
fighting
showed that.
on the street, in like literally in between two cars on the floor.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
that went viral. That went viral. That went
I
viral.
just literally I just recently got that video. You know what I mean? But again,
Yeah, that went viral.
I think my biggest thing is you saw the other cop get mad, like "fuck, what you do?" You know what I mean? And then he quickly get on the radio. So it's not that that other cop, you know, allowed the bad cop to do it. It was something that happened, and then you see one cop is like upset, like "yo, you just shot this dude," and he quickly panics, gets on his radio, and starts calling for a bus, for an ambulance, and so on and so forth. And these are the things that, you know, me as a police officer, I dissect that video in a different light, because I can see where one guy chose to do something where the other guy wasn't even thinking to do that. And then when it happened, like that cop's whole world crumbled, and you can see it. And a lot of people aren't going to see that portion, but that's what I see. His world is like, oh my God, we just shot this guy. And he's like, quickly, send me a bus, shots fired, da 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 da. And the other cop is just chill, right? If we're talking about the same video. So again, we have to individually hold the person who takes the action accountable, because
and I guess the problem with that becomes, right, we know that individuals are accountable for themselves and their actions, but the problem, and I think we're ignoring the problem again, that we have evidence, we have proof that it doesn't stop at the individual officer. We look into the department and it's 7 guys, it's 8 guys who've done racist things. Then we look to the DA's office and they don't want to prosecute, and they cover this up, they cover that up. The larger issue, bro, is racism. It's the society, it's the system. That is a lot of times the larger issue, because like you said, when these incidents happen that are wrong and they get checked, nobody talks about it. But the ones that go unchecked for months, that get swept under the rug, the officer that might have been attacked by his own, the officer that might have been threatened by his own, these incidents exist. They exist.
And I know that they exist. But again, it is, if you know that it exists as a citizen, right? It's incumbent upon you to bring attention to that, because as the police officer, again, I worked in Orange County. You're talking at that time 1,500 sworn cops, right? 1% is 15 deputies, right? So if you highlight 10 bad cops, you're talking about less than 1% of the cops on just that agency that are out there running amok doing dumb shit. You know what I mean? And I worked OBT. The guys that used to work on the east side where Steve lives, I don't know none of those guys. You know, I may know 1 or 2 because maybe I went to the academy with them, maybe I went to a training with them, but I don't know all of them. You know what I mean? So now what happens
but you do know the guys that you encounter. You do know the guys that you do encounter that are pieces of shit. You do know the guys in the FOP that are pieces of shit. So what is, as citizens, we are doing our part to try to highlight these things. But what, again, from the blue side, do we say as a department, do we go in there? Are we having these conversations? Are you guys having these conversations when you're jacketing up and everything, saying that this is bullshit, bro? If you hear it, we need to say something about it. This is the type of stuff that I'm talking about. Just culturally having a different mindset to say, we know there's some guys that pull the trigger, they fuck up, they do the wrong thing. But you know what? That guy in 64, we know this guy, he's a dick, he's a racist. We got to start speaking up. We can't wait till the end, on the back end, when it happens. Now we got to clean it up, because one loss of life, right, is one too many. So it's like when dude has a jacket this fucking long and then he shoots a dude in the back and no one said anything. When's the cultural change from the blue side gonna say we have a fucking problem? Like, we got a problem.
So
we talked about everything under the sun.
Yeah. So let me get in. I don't think it's fair to try and hold you accountable, or ask you to explain, the actions of these individuals. Like you said, it's individual mental stability, mental strength, mental toughness, right? How you respond. But I think what gets us, right, and two things, the underlying for us is when the videos, like you said, where you're saying we see officers not taking that step and not shooting when we would, right? It just appears that that's always when, the person is white, right? It's rare that we see them not shoot when it's somebody black, right? And so that's where we get into it's racism, okay? And so where we are is it's going to be education, right? Education for us as civilians as to what the fuck is happening on the back end. Is anything happening on the back end to fix this and prevent it in the future, besides having a voluntary fucking conference about how to deal with black people, right? And of course you're going to have minorities go to that because they care about that. But if these white officers are not forced to do that, this should be a mandate, right? They should be mandatory processes that are put in place for these people to understand how to police us or we, right? Including yourself, because you're minority, right? So educate us as to what is, if anything, happening, so that maybe we can have a different outlook, and our listeners can have a different outlook. And again, just wanted, for anybody that's just joining, we're being joined by a deputy from South Florida who's kind of helping us understand what they're dealing with on their side, to clarify and help prevent all the negative tension that comes from the Castworthy podcast.
So every agency has training when it comes to dealing with races and cultures and LGBT and all these different things. They have the training to include the fact that you got your internal policies that say you can't discriminate against your coworker because he's white, black, brown, gay, lesbian, whatever the case may be. So then you got those guys, you got those guys that, they have their personal views, you know what I mean? And again, for me, I just feel I've been doing it so long enough, and I've molded, I've shaped new cops coming in and have them understand where they're working at. You know what I mean? Again, I just feel like it's hard, because some guys would say, make a racist remark or whatever, and there are people who complain on them. You know what I mean? And again, they go into their internal affairs investigations. They'll say, oh, it was just this, that, and the third. I didn't mean it. I wasn't trying to be out of pocket with that comment or whatever the case may be. They may get a written reprimand or, get suspended for a little bit, whatever the case may be. So is it that the agency itself is trying to hide it? No, because, look, Atlanta PD, they just shot that guy, right? But the majority of the police force, to include their police chief, was black. So I'm sure that there's training there. I'm sure that a lot of those officers, aren't racist. You know what I mean? I'm sure a lot of those officers probably grew up in the hood in Atlanta, so those are the ones that you have to say, hey, why is this going on? You guys let this guy do this. And then they're going to tell you, I didn't let him do anything. We try to control this guy. We've tried to do this. Again, he continues to fuck up. That's on him. You know what I mean? It's no different than having friends that keep stupid choices. At some point, you go, fuck, I've done everything I can possibly fucking do. I've told my supervisor. I've written formal complaints. I've done this. Nothing's going to happen. You have to let the cycle go through itself and let him, bite the bullet. You know what I mean? Because, at the end of the day, for me, it's always going to be personal accountability. It's incumbent upon me to, when I'm training someone, to have them understand, hey, you see, we're going to right now, we're going to this trailer park, but you may encounter people who don't like you and they're going to just be complete assholes to you. But that doesn't mean that everybody in the trailer park is bad. and you as a trainer, you as a person that's training these new cops coming on, you have to it's pivotal for you to do that. You know what I mean? And agencies need to change how they create their field training program, because some agencies allow people to train after 2 years on the job. Listen, you don't know how to do that job after 2 years, man. It takes 5+ years to really say you've enough that you can handle any situation that's thrown your way. You know what I mean? And I think that's probably one of the problems there is that, we have to see who we're allowing to train the new cops. If you don't know how to do your job, how can you train someone else to do this job? If you really don't know the neighborhood you're patrolling in, how can you, train someone else to patrol? You're just going to train them or teach them bad habits,
Right.
And that there is, a problem in that. I didn't become a field training officer until I had 5-6 years on, because me personally, I said, I need to understand this job. I need to know everything because I don't want to be a training officer that now I got this new rookie cop who's looking at me like, this guy don't know shit, and he's training me. You know what I mean? And that's, Vari would understand. That's the Marine in me. You have to present yourself. If you're going to train someone, you better be, as we would say in the Marine Corps, squared the fuck away. If you're not, they're going to call you out on your shit. They're going to call you out. And I'm not going to have some guy training me call me out, that you suck. Look at you in your uniform. Look at you look like shit in your uniform. You don't even present yourself well. That's not going to be me. I'll never be caught slipping. So for me, I was a young, dumb cop. When I first started on, man, if I found a roach on you, you was going to jail, But as time progressed, and I started understanding it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And what am I really doing arresting this guy for a roach? You know what I mean? Okay, it's an arrest stat for me, but did I do anything good? Did anything good come from it? You know what I mean? And when I had that self-reflection, that's when my whole world, changed, and my whole attitude towards policing changed. And I had a good reputation in the hood. I had those interactions. I had cigarettes in my car that I would give to people that I interacted with. I would let the guy, I took you to jail for a half a cookie of crack. Okay, listen, you ain't gonna be able to smoke it. You want a cigarette? Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. You need some water? Many times I would give him my own water, because again, you have to have a human aspect to it. Steve, my brother's background, listen, I could be the exception to the rule, but again, it's up to me to train my coworkers, you know what I mean? And I did. I felt like I did. I felt like, I had good cops that I work with. Once I got to work with them for a while, they understood how to work because I set the example, self-reflection, self-accountability. I set the example. I set the bar, and I set a high bar. If you set yourself a shitty fucking bar or low bar because you just want to go wake up, put your uniform on, go earn a fucking paycheck and go to fuck home and you don't give a fuck, then you're the problem.
And so that's definitely understandable, and I hear you, and I'm glad I'm back in the conversation now. But hearing what
welcome
EJ was
back.
saying about
an hour in. Thanks for getting your technical difficulties fixed over there.
Hearing what EJ was saying about racism, and again, we understand that you individually can't solve every issue there is with police in the entire United States. I mean, no one is naive enough to believe that. But I think the problem when we talk about racism in policing is not only in individual police officers in themselves, but it's inherently in the system, right? And so when you see a policy like in New York City where they have stop and frisk, yeah, this is a city policy, but you see it being implemented and used predominantly on people of color, where when they looked at the studies back in like 2012, 2013, whenever it was when they went away, you had something like 70 to 80% of the stops that happened to Black and brown people. When you look at a city like Ferguson, for example, where the majority of the city is black, but the majority of the police officers are white. And then you look at a police department that's essentially funding itself using traffic stops. And then when they look at the racial breakdown of who's being stopped, who's being arrested, who's being ticketed, et cetera, is the majority of black people who these laws are being enforced upon. And so when you look at things like that and the data and the statistics, that's where I think a lot of, people talk about the racism that comes in policing. It's something that's inherent, it's systematic in the system. And you as an individual who are training new officers who are coming into the system could say, hey, this is how you interact with people. This is how you'll handle things when you interact with people of color. This is how you de-escalate, et cetera. But a lot of that policy is set, it seems to be, to enforce the law on black people, and then everybody else will kind of deal with on a case-by-case basis. And that just, I think that puts a bad taste in people's mouths, and then they have those shitty interaction with cops, because then it feels like it don't feel like it really does just seem like it's an us versus them mentality, us meaning like the black community versus the cops. And then you have this antagonistic interaction anytime that you deal with the police, because you feel like they're out to get you.
So does that?
Okay, so going back to what you were talking about, Ferguson, is listen to what you just said. You got a town, a community that's black, but the majority of the police officers are white. So that's a problem. You know what I mean? And you're going to have that disparity. It's easy to call, a police officer a racist when the majority of them are white. You know what I mean? You have to have that ethnic diversity. But now here comes the problem. The people in that community, do they want to become cops? Do they want to change? Do they want to be that positive role model? And that's where I think the law enforcement realm lacks. I think in Dallas, when those police officers shot, the police chief, who was a black man, said, if you guys have an issue with how my police officers are handling the situation, then go ahead, we're hiring, sign up. But nobody wants to do the job, but everybody wants to be critical of the job. And people in the hood that got education and can do the job, but they don't want to do it because they understand that it is a stressful job. They understand that there's a lot of bullshit that comes with the job. So, you have to want to change. You know what I mean? You have to want to do it. If I can honestly say that I've worked for tons of white supervisors and whatnot. I've never had one that said, oh, I need you to go out and proactively patrol black neighborhoods. You know what I mean? I've never had one say that. But guess what? When you assign me as a minority to a predominantly black neighborhood, I'm going to go out there and work. You know what I mean? Because again, personally, I'm a cop. It's cops and robbers. You know what I mean? It's a game. And if I stop you and I find something and we get in a foot pursuit and you dust my ass, guess what? I can't let my ego drive me. I chalk that one up to the game. All right, you won today, but guess what? I know when I come back on shift tomorrow, you're going to be back on the same corner. I'm just going to try to get you again. You know what I mean? And if I get you, hey, I got caught. Chalk it up to the game. Because again, I made reference earlier. Steve knows my brother's background. You got to chalk it up to the game. I never heard my brother say, oh, these racist ass cops and this, that, and the third. And he got arrested many a times in Bridgeport, Connecticut. You know what I mean? So it's the mindset that you have. If you feel, I've arrested, oh, you arrested me because I'm black. And I'm like, do you see my skin color? Like, you know what I mean? I'm like Steve, where, my mom is white and my dad is black. You know what I mean? Except Puerto Rican and my dad's Cuban, But so like, what are you talking about? I hate when people used to say that to me. You know what I mean? But conversely, I've had people take me to court and file complaints on me saying that the only reason why I stopped them was because they were white in a black neighborhood, that I was racially profiling them. And I wasn't. Why? Because I stopped them for traffic offense. I made to write that ticket. You know what I mean? That's what people fail to realize. They'll say, "Oh, for this," and then you do the investigation. Well, why they for the reason you know what I mean? You have to have if you're stopping someone for a reason, you best enforce that reason you're stopping them. You know, that's why they're man. Consensual encounters. A consensual encounter is just walking down the street. I see you walking. I pull up in my car. I get out. I'm gonna watch you. Hey man, what's going on? You can go fuck you and keep moving. I'll just say what? Have a nice day. I can't do nothing. You know what I mean? It's my ego, my self-reflection, my self-accountability. I can't let you flipping me the bird say, "Oh fuck shit, I ain't gonna let this fucker disrespect me like that." And you have to understand. That's always been my view. You have to understand where you work. If you don't understand where you work, you can never affect a positive change.
Indeed. Yeah. So
I think for me, right, and everything that I'm hearing, I agree with a large part of what you're saying. I think you may I think you may be missing the mark again on how much racism may play in all of this. You said that people got to start to want to become cops and that a lot of people don't want to do it because of the difficulty of the job. That may be true. But we also can't ignore the fact that, right, you grew up in Bridgeport and your upbringing and where you grew up and your experiences have shaped who you are. Surprisingly, there are a lot of black people that have never encountered racism until they become adults. That's a fact. But there are a lot of people that, because of where they live in impoverished areas, and they have these white cops that aren't from there that could very well be racist. We don't know. They have these experiences and it shapes who they become and how they feel about officers going forward. And again, we're not expecting you to speak for the entire blue shield of the world. But again, through everything you say, you're putting a lot more of the emphasis of training and culture and all of this stuff because it's from your purview, it's your experience, is what you know. But I think largely in this country that we have as black people that are not on the side of the badge is that we see these incidents and the only thing left at the end when you peel away all the layers can only feel like racism. And that's like when you peel all of the layers back and you say this guy Dylan Roof was Dylan Roof was freaking armed like the Terminator and was taken in with no incident, given Burger King, all of this, right? And so, as an officer, when somebody approaches a scene or a situation, depending on where they are, they already have to assess that, okay, this might be this kind of person, this might be this kind of situation. The thing is, these individuals that we don't know if they're racist, they're going in this with preconceived stuff that's further than lack of training. It's further than lack of diversity. Some of these people are literally inherently racist. And we've seen how systemically, the departments, the laws, all of this perpetuates it. The policies, all of this perpetuates it. And again, I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. We have to make that the beginning of the conversation sometimes. It can't wait. We can't wait until all of this stuff has already happened and it's lack of training. And not, we have to start to highlight then, hey, this person actually just might be
and not only that, right? Us as individuals, we are a collection of experiences. So like EJ said, where you may have an individual who may not experience racism until they become an adult. Our experiences, me, for example, right? I'm a black man from Miami, Florida, right? And I was raised by a mom and a grandma who are from the South. My grandma grew up in 1930s, 40s, 50s, Mississippi, right? And so I've heard like crazy shit that has helped shape my understanding of how, I should interact with the police and what I should expect from the police and things like that. Not to mention my own experiences that I've had with the police. So when I talk to my son about the police, it's from that perspective, right? And so like when you were saying earlier about, when you interact with an individual, you expect the same respect that they're giving you. I think that police officers have to understand that a lot of people, especially in the African American community, are coming from those experiences where our parents are telling us, you know, look what happened to, you know, to Eric Gardner or Rodney King. This is what happened to me,
Emmett
you know,
Till.
on and on and on. And these things kind of shape our experiences and our expectations of what we can get from the police. So like when you said earlier, you know, sometimes you go to talk to somebody about an incident when they report some type of misconduct and they're like, you know, fuck you, I don't want to talk to you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Part of that response, I believe, comes from those set of experiences, whether they're lived or passed down generationally, you know. And I think that officers have to understand that these lived experiences that a lot of Black people have, it's not like people are making this shit up, you know, and they have to do a better job of not only informing themselves on how people in the Black community feel about interactions with the police, but also do those things like you talked about that you do personally in your interactions with individuals, to have people have those good experiences to help kind of chip away, you know, that wall.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and I came from Central Florida, and the Orlando Police Department had Black chiefs. The sheriff's office, had its first Black sheriff, Jerry Demings, and he changed policy.
He's the
He
mayor now.
implemented certain things. He implemented, he's the mayor now, but he implemented community policing. Like each sector had, 2 deputies that their main responsibility was to go out and interact with, the HOAs and the community and the stores and the things of that nature. So when building those relationships with he job, but again, he changed. He implements. However, still incumbent upon individual deputy who is tasked to do those, to carry them out in a good, favorable way.
Broke up.
Did we lose him?
Yeah, I'll try to get him right back. It broke up a little bit.
Steve over there on the internet. That's why.
Don't you blame me for it? I ain't got shit to do with it. It took
Because you're all
it
internet.
took Vari an hour. It took Vari an hour to get fucking set up. You try to blame me.
Because it's your fault. You're all internet.
But no,
You
I
control
think that the
all of it.
dialogue has been good so far. I enjoy having them on, to talk about these issues and to get a different perspective.
And everything he's saying is what we want. Everything he's saying is exactly what we want. But I think the element of racism is being overlooked, overshadowed, maybe not held as much weight with, what I mean? Because it's like we can't expect him to speak for everybody. But dog, when you examine these cases after cases after cases and you peel back the layers, what more, what I mean? Like brother in Atlanta was shot in the back.
And
Like, okay, we talked about training, we talked about culture. Like, at what point do you just say, okay, maybe there might be some racism?
and I
in
think
this?
part of the issue is, EJ, is that sometimes, like, especially like when you talk to someone who's in, since he's an active officer, like he even said, in my however long career, like no one's ever told me I want you to go over here and pull over Black people, right? But that's not the way that it happens. That's not the way that the systematic racism in the system is deployed, right? The way that it's deployed is that you have a force of 100 officers or however many, depending upon the size of the community that you police, and you put 80% of them in the Black and brown neighborhoods, right? You have a stop and frisk policy in NYC, and you stop 80% people of color, right? And you have a no tolerance drug policy And when you stop a black person or a Hispanic person and you find a roach on them or whatever, they're arrested. But when you find, a bag of coke on this white college kid, you let them off with a warning and say, hey, this could change your life, so you better get your shit together. You see what I'm saying? And so while no one in the police department is going to tell their officers, hey, we're sending you over there to this black neighborhood and you need to make sure you arrest at least 10 black people so we can systematically disenfranchise them. It's never going to happen that way, right? But it's about how you deploy your people and how you use your discretion in not only arresting people but bringing charges, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess to EJ's point, we know it's racism, and I feel like, AP knows it's racism just the same, or knows that there is racism there, right? But utilizing the opportunity and the platform to help understand that it is a shared responsibility. And that's one of the things that he did say that I kind of took away from it. And I think it is important for us to also understand that, right? And I've said it multiple times. We lean on our skin color, and we do don't get me wrong. I agree that a lot of it can come down to race, or does come down to racism. But we do lean on it, right? And I think anytime we see somebody that is black or of some type of minority being charged. Now, obviously, the killings, that's totally different. But somebody being charged, or we're seeing these videos, we immediately lean on racism, right? And I think we have to, as a people, we have to get away from that. We know it's there, but shedding some light on the other side of it, where we can help other people take accountability to understand what cops are coming across on a day-to-day basis, how we can prevent this in the future, right? Whether that means, he's a minority. He comes from Bridgeport, Connecticut. He's familiar with the hood, right? But how does somebody that's from the hood that gets pulled over by the white man that doesn't start that conversation? How do they start that interaction? And I know, VP, you always say, when I tell you, hey, just shut the fuck up and comply. Well, not you, but when I say that, you're like, well, why should we have to? Well, we have to because we want to make it out alive, right? Should we have to do it? Should we have to do that? No, we shouldn't have to do that. But should we do it? Absolutely. If it's gonna mean that the person gets away, unharmed, then I think that's something that we have to teach our kids. And I know that you say you teach TJ that, and that's how I'll be teaching my son.
And I definitely understand the point that you're making, Steve. And my point to that, is exactly that. Why should we have to? But also, I think by doing that, we also help enforce the bad behavior by police, where it's okay for them to treat us like shit. You know what I'm saying? And that can't, I want to say we can't allow it to be the norm, because it kind of is the norm, where we have to make bad behavior unacceptable, right? I'm not sure if you guys saw the video from Nassau County up in New York, happened over the weekend. It was one of the protests. They're marching in the street, and the guy has he has one of those roller bags, but it has a speaker in it, and he's he's saying whatever his message is or whatever. And what the cop does is he gets in front of him and just purposely stops, which makes this dude run into his back. And then the cops are like, don't touch him. And they basically arrest him. I'm not sure what the charges are yet, but I'm pretty sure they filed some type of assault charge or something like that on this dude, right? And when we talk about culture and, good apples, bad apples, et cetera, the rest of the cops basically surround this dude. They arrest him, put him in cuffs. They arrested another person who tried to intervene. And it's stuff like that that make me say, where are the other cops saying, hey, this shit is unacceptable? Now, because this thing went viral, I've seen it all over Twitter and Facebook and shit like that. I'm pretty sure whatever this guy was charged with is going to be dropped. But what's happening to the cases like this that we don't see? which is what the problem is. And I think it makes a lot of people say throughout these protests is, if we're seeing cops behave in this manner when the cameras are on, what the fuck is happening when no one is looking? And I think it's what keeps people in this heightened in this heightened state of fear and in dealing with the police.
And you speak about Nassau County. I didn't see that video, but you know, I lived in New York City and then moved to Nassau County, and geographically it's like stone throw from each other. It's just different jurisdictions, right? And two of my best friends are NYPD cops right now, and systemically, you don't see little to. I don't think I ever seen a black cop in Nassau County ever in my life. And systemically, it's harder for minorities to get a job in Nassau and Suffolk County, and it's on record that their hiring practices have been racist. So you don't even get to have two guys like my best friends who are from Nassau County get an opportunity to even serve their community, right? And then when you look at Baltimore, where there was a moment where I was going to be an officer, they got a policy, as well as the state police have a policy. Well, if you've ever smoking weed at some point, you know, it's going to hurt your chances, but they don't ask about other drugs that are used by other ethnicities. They don't ask about ecstasy and all of these other things. Marijuana is some of the disqualifying factors. So those are also some cultural policies that are put in place in some instances to seemingly deter people of minority backgrounds from becoming the law.
Yeah. So I want to welcome you back, AP. I know we had some technical difficulties, but glad to have you back here. Glad to have you on the pod with us to help us kind of understand the blue side of things. So kind of getting back into the dialogue and back into the conversation. To EJ's point, have you seen, and I know you can't give us details obviously, but do you think, or have you seen things that would prevent people of color or minorities or black people from potentially becoming cops? And is that why we're seeing these, aside from obviously being felons, but is that why we're seeing these white people patrolling, or these white officers patrolling the inner city with people, of course, that they don't know how to approach or deal with?
A lot of the things that I've seen, it's pretty much applicants. You have to apply. There's things that go into effect, like there's policies. You can't have like more than 3 tickets, like motor vehicle driving tickets, citations within a certain amount of time. Your credit score. There's factors that play into it. But no, I've been on interview panels for new hires, and believe it or not, you'll be surprised that sometimes the minority candidate comes in there and blows it away and gets hired. But again, I'm speaking coming from a big agency that's in a big city, big melting pot that Orlando is. I can't speak for, like he was saying, Baltimore, that they have those policies put in place. But I know that, for Orange County, no. I mean, over the years, I've seen more and more minority female officers. I should have split that up. Minority and female officers be hired. And it's good, because now all you're not dealing with is just that white male cop. You're also dealing with females. Females are statistically known, doesn't matter what race they are, to be a little bit more empathetic with people. And
don't get EJ started on females. He hates women. He only loves one part of the woman. Actually, 2.
He
likes 2
Haters
parts of the
Club.
women.
but
He-Man Woman Haters Club.
So, um, because when I got hired, I mean, when I went to the academy, I think Steve, you met one of my really good friends that works for the Orlando Police Department, and he's a black guy. And from the onset, if you saw him out and about, you would not even think twice that he's a cop. Like literally, just looking at his appearance, his tattoos.
He looks like a felon.
But yet, he's a college educated guy with no criminal history, you know what I mean? And he became a cop. So, you have good cops working the streets, and you have, and him and I just recently had a conversation about this, and he cut a lot of his co-workers off. Like, listen, don't even talk to me. Now I know where the line's been drawn at, because of all of these things that have been coming about. So you do have it out there. You know what I mean? I think agencies do a good job in trying to hire, and be diverse in their hiring. But, those towns like Ferguson, Missouri, those fall under the radar. And, again, I think if no one brings it to that attention, no one brings it to the lawmakers and say, hey, why is this police agency, let's look back 2 or 3 years. Let's see how many black, applicants they had and why didn't they get hired, and so on and so forth. So, it's bigger, it becomes a bigger problem because, again, systemic racism is something that we just can't do away. You know what I mean? And, a panel interview has the questions are tailored to law enforcement, to the job that you're going to get, and unfortunately, when we do our psychologicals and things of that nature, they're not really meant to identify a racist, which I think, we need to maybe implore the lawmakers to have that a policy that when you're hiring and you send these guys to take their psychological exams, that there should be, out of the 250 questions that you answer, and it's really like 30 questions just asked, in different formats, and it becomes so redundant just to see how you answer them. I think we need to, identify these things those little things that we can do to identify those races, to identify those prejudices that someone may have and they may bring to the job. But, as a regular cop trying to make it, you're not in a position to make a change, so you can only make a change as to what you can control, which is your peers and the people that you interact with. We have to.
I think you can make a change, though. Even any change, even as little as minute as it might seem, every change is a good change. Just to having the conversation, the locker room talk, the water cooler talk, just anything that you encounter, even on a professional level, just saying, hey, even if you're educating one other guy, that is a change. Even if you come in contact with a lawmaker or when you're going to the polls, or I think every little thing that you can do as an officer helps. You know what I mean? Like especially being somebody behind the badge. I'm not saying, I get what you're saying in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think everything counts.
But keep in mind, when you're a public servant, as a law enforcement officer, a lot of times we're restricted from many things that we can do, especially at work, as far as, if you don't agree with what your higher ups are doing or your elected officials are doing, you can't voice that at your job, because you have those policies and those rules put in place that you can't have you can't have any type of political discussions in the workplace. And a lot of times that's what it is. It's like, no, this new chief, this new sheriff, this new whatever, he lobbied to get this either added or taken away to our policy and to our rules and regulations. And, we can't voice it, because if we voice it, now we're fired. You know what I mean? And a lot of times, an individual is not going to risk losing his job to voice his opinion. And I'm not saying that it's right, but, that's where we're at. It's
self-preservation for sure. You got to protect the bag. And I mean, I've worked for various state agencies and government agencies, and even currently I kind of watch what I'm saying in my current position and the things that I say for that right and that reason. But it's just, I think it's gonna be time now that we as minorities in position to do something, do what we can when we can. You know what I mean? And I think your perspective, and we said before you got off, everything that you said is right. Everything that we expect somebody wearing a badge is what you said and what you exemplify. It's those that we of course all been talking about, and it's just that element of race. It's big. It's bigger than what we really think.
Oh yeah.
We as people who have felt it, we know it, but it's big. It's huge, man. It's just huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
So
Huge.
so while we're
Huge.
so AP, while we have you, let me ask you about another topic along this same vein, but just a little bit different here, about the thing that's kind of trending now with defund the police. And before you answer, let me say what my understanding of defund the police is, just to make sure that we're kind of speaking from the same sheet of music here. So my understanding of what defund the police is that take money away from the police department to do things that police officers should not be doing, dealing with mental health situations, dealing with shit happening at school or whatever, where you see like these resource officers, dealing with kids and homelessness and things of those natures. Pull money away from the police from dealing with those kind of things and allow law enforcement officers to deal with crime, robberies, murders, rapes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and stop having them deal with things like traffic. Where I'm not sure how much you can speak to that, given that you are an active police officer, but if you can shed any light on it, what do you feel about it?
Again, we're having a discussion, and in my personal opinion, I mean, when it comes to defunding the police, it's
super shitty name, by the way. They should have said something else. Reorganize the police or something like
well,
that. When you say defund, it makes people think there's going to be no cops.
You can't just put a blanket name on something. You have to be specific. Hey, let's take away funding from this to apply it to this. You can't just say defund the police. I personally was firsthand. I remember vividly when a coworker of mine, we arrested a young kid. And if you're in Orlando, I mean, this may be easily 6-7 years ago, if not more. But had a normal interaction with the kid, talked to the kid, stopped the kid, asked the kid if he had anything on him. The kid had normal dialogue. Well, as soon as he was like, okay, do you mind if I search your pocket, your person? The kid says, no problem. But the moment he put his hands on him, the kid went crazy, started fighting the cop. Okay. So what did he get arrested for? Resisting with violence and battery on a law enforcement officer. Not within 30 minutes after being booked in the jail, we had autism awareness people freaking the news because that kid was autistic. But we didn't know. You know what I mean? We did not know. He had nothing on him. We didn't know. He answered questions cleanly. Everything was right up until the moment that the deputy put his hands on him. So, listen, we went through like tons and tons of autism awareness training. You know what I mean? I remember being in the station and they brought in local families within our own communities with kids from the varying degrees of autism. You know what I mean? From mild to like severe, and it was very insightful because we learned how to deal with these kids. If they get away, they're combative and so on and so forth, how to talk to them, how to, deal with them. So when we talk about defunding the police and putting it back into the community, we have to really make sure that what are we taking away? What are we not going to fund? You know what I mean? So it's a fine line because now you may take away, and one of the things that I feel bad about, and I say feel bad, like I don't like, is a lot of these programs like PAL and things of that nature are being defunded, and we don't have that interaction with the kids anymore. We don't have that voice to interact with them in a positive light, play basketball with them, you know what I mean, and do those things. So when you say defund the police, what are we taking away from the police? You know what I mean? And based on your definition, what are we taking away? You know, LAPD, I read the article and I was talking to my wife about it, and I'm like, you know, they're giving 150 million, they're taking 150 million dollars away from the LAPD. And when you look at it on the initial onset, you're like, oh my God, $150 million. But then when you look at the bigger picture, their budget is 1.8 billion. So 150 million really does nothing like to hurt their overall budget. You know what I mean? So we have to look at that. We have to look at, and we can't just defund the police just to defund them. If we're going to defund the police, we have to utilize that money that we're taking away from their training, from their budget, to put it into services in the community that help integrate the law enforcement and the community. We can't just give it to the community and say, that's it. You know what I mean? Oh, here you guys go. No. If you're going to take it away from me as a person, on a personal level, if you're going to take it away from me, that's fine. But let me help guide you. You know, if I'm going to help pay for education, then let me help educate you. Let me help be there to tutor you, to mentor you, to show you a different side of me. You know, let's just not say, well, we're going to take it away and we're going to put it back in the inner cities. Okay, what are you going to do with the inner cities? You know what I mean? Who's going to be accountable for that money? The same crooked ass politicians that skim money all the time? You know what I mean? So we have to make sure that when you're going to defund the police, there needs to be a good oversight of where that money is going to go. And let's make sure that it's helping bridge that gap that the communities and law enforcement have. You know, let's help, you know, utilize that money to give kids an opportunity to, you know, to do ride-alongs, to understand what the police do, that it's not all about what they see on the media or what, you know, what culturally from, you know, from what they see and hear in the community and from their families. You know, let's change that dialogue. Let's change that narrative. You know, it starts in the home. You know, you experienced it, but you're not gonna make sure that, you know, your kids treat cops like shit, because, you know, there are good cops, there are good school resource officers out there that do a good job interacting with these kids and try to bridge that gap.
Yeah, I think like we said before in other pods, and just the influence of the media, that, you know, the defund the police obviously isn't figured out and thought of, and, you know, and people don't realize, okay, are you defunding the police, or are you defunding services, EMS services? And then, hey, there is crime going on out there, so response time is going to be affected. So I don't, you know, some of the people that are saying this, generally they clearly just don't know what the hell they're talking about. And really, we just need to look at how we
Well,
can make things better, you know.
let's
So let me jump back in real quick. So first, AP, let me just say, like hearing you tell the story about what happened with the kid that you guys interacted with who was autistic, you know, that kind of hit home for me a little bit, just because my son is on the autism spectrum. So I'm glad, at least here in Central Florida, you know, cops are receiving training on how to interact with people who have that particular condition. Secondly, you mentioned PAL, the Police Athletic League. For any of the listeners who don't know what that is, I definitely love that program as well. I played basketball for it when I was in middle school. So, you know, definitely glad that you brought that up as well. As far as defunding the police, when people are talking about that, what they're basically saying is that, less like in Minnesota, for example, in Minneapolis, since this is where kind of everything touched off from, they have a police department that has a budget of something like $330 million. The police department in Minneapolis is actually 1/3 of the entire city's budget. And so they're saying, let's pull money away from the police department and put those resources into, you know, some type of government agency slash program, etc., that deal with homelessness. So that way, when there's a problem with the homeless person, they're not calling 911. They're calling some agency, you know, the homeless bureau or whatever you want to call it, that's going to go out and deal with the situation. If the situation escalates and we need to get law enforcement involved, okay, we can call 911 and you know, get things where they need to go. With the situation that happened at the Wendy's in Atlanta over weekend, this guy, I don't know if he was intoxicated or whatever the situation was. He's sleeping in a drive-through. Instead of calling 911 to have a police officer deal with something like that, because falling asleep in a car at a drive-through doesn't seem to be a crime to me. We could have called a tow truck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so things of that nature, right? When we have a kid who's acting out in school, instead of us calling the resource officer to deal with a kid who's being an asshole, because kids who are that age are assholes, right? We could call someone who is a social services type of person. So and that's why I wanted to kind of define my understanding of defund the police when we first broached the topic, is not saying let's shut down the police department, because that is complete bullshit. It's let's pull some resources away from police officers, so that way police officers can focus on doing police officer shit, solving crime, rape, murder, and things like that. Police officers, in my opinion, shouldn't be dealing with traffic and homelessness and mental health issues and things of that nature, because these things aren't inherently criminal. They're they're more of a social problem, and we can have people who are trained in social work to deal with social issues.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And it's funny you bring up the school resource officer thing, because when I saw that video with the Orlando police officer that, he put that girl in handcuffs, how can I say this? Because I know you guys are going to jump on me right now. But like initially I was like, hold on. It looked bad, but let me see the bigger picture. And it's what you said. Why did they call the cops for a girl having a tantrum? The girl had a tantrum, and then the teacher tried to control her. She kicked the teacher. Oh, let's call the police. Well, you call the police. What do you think we're going to do? And then on top of that situation, they arrested that little girl, right? Quote unquote. Well, as far as I'm concerned, in order to make an arrest, you have to have a victim pressing charges. You can't. The only crime that you can make an arrest without having a victim pressing charges is murder and domestic violence. Okay? So that means the teacher must have wrote a statement and said, I want to press charges against this little girl for kicking me. You see what I'm saying? So now who looks bad? The police officer, because he didn't have this little girl crying in handcuffs in the back of the car. But at the end of the day, he did his job. The teachers called him there. They said, she kicked me, she did this, she did that. They must have provided a sworn written statement and must have said they want to press charges, because if they didn't want to press charges, guess what? I'm putting a little kid in handcuffs. I'm not going to take anybody, an adult or a kid, to jail if no one wants to press charges. You know what I mean? It's what we call on the streets, mutual combatants. You and EJ want to fight on the street, and we get there. I go, EJ, what happened? Oh, we was in a fight. I can pull surveillance videos. I can get witness statements until my hair falls out. But guess what? If you don't want to press charges against EJ and EJ don't want to press charges against you, we ain't got nothing.
I'm pressing charges.
So
Vari's going down.
So again, in that situation, in that situation, I'm not saying that the police officer should have a little bit more, empathy for the little girl. You know what I mean? But we have to look at the bigger picture in that. And it's so quick to point, oh my God, look at what this cop did. Why is he arresting her? And I'm looking at it from a cop standpoint, because somebody said they wanted to press charges. You don't just take a little girl, you don't arrest a kid, without someone wanting to press charges for a crime. You know what I mean? So what was she being arrested for? She was being arrested for battery. You see what I'm saying? So we're holding the police officer accountable, but we're not holding the teachers accountable and the principal accountable for calling the cops and pressing charges. For a girl having a tantrum and that's why I brought up the autism stuff, because we need to be better at teaching everyone that deals with our youth on these problems. We can't just automatically say, well, you're a cop, you're a professional, you should know better. No, these teachers too have to understand, wow, she was what, first grade, second grade, 6, 7 years old. Listen, I ain't taking no 7-year-old down to the thing. for something like that. You calm them down, you call the parent, and you have the parent come down because they might be going through some mental disorders, anxiety, depression, whatever, bipolar. Let's get the kid help. But a lot of times
right. And AP, you're 100% right, and I think that's kind of the thinking behind the defund the police thing. Shitty name again. I'll keep saying it over and over again. is that the people are saying, let's take situations like that out of the police hands, right? So not only would we have to reform, the police for situations like that, but we have to also reform the community to say, this is not shit that you call the police for. A child throwing a tantrum, anybody who has a kid has probably gotten that call from the school, hey, your kid is acting up. That's not something you need to call 911 for. That's something you call the parents for. Okay, this kid kicked the teacher. That kind of shit is unacceptable. I don't know if maybe they can say this is a first time, so we're going to just suspend, or maybe you get to an expulsion standpoint or something like that. But this, even though you put your hands on another person, I get that can be classified as a battery or an assault, et cetera, et cetera. But we're talking about a 6-year-old throwing a tantrum, and they don't need to be arrested, So we need to not only, I feel like, reform the police, but also reform our people, our individuals, our citizens, that this is not shit you call the police for. Hey, Wendy's, the guy fell asleep in your parking lot. Okay, that kind of sucks. Get somebody out there, have the cars go around them to get the food out, and call a tow truck and get this guy out of here or whatever. The police have better shit to do.
I think those are two different instances, though, right? Like if somebody in Wendy's felt the need to maybe call the cops because they were afraid, that might have been a case. But again, when they arrived and what they did from that point on, all this shit could have been avoided. They were just like, dude, if you're drunk, you know what I mean, take the keys, let them stay there. You know what I mean? I get what you're saying, VP. I'm just saying that,
well,
I can see where somebody might have called the cops at Wendy's for a dude sleeping in the car. Asshole thing to do, but I can see how it could happen. I'm not agreeing with it. I'm saying I could see how it could happen versus a 6-year-old in the school. Like, where the fuck was the resource workers? Where was the principal? Where was social services? I mean, a lot of different things should have came in that regard. I get your point. I can see where somebody might have called the cops for a dude sleeping in his car. But again, the problem ensues now when they got there. Motherfucker told them like, yo, I was drinking, came over here, I was going to sleep. At that point, it's just like, where do you just say, you know what? Even as an officer, right? Everything that's happened. All right, motherfucker. I don't want to be the next one viral. I don't want you saying that some bullshit is happening. Go on about your fucking day. Walk home. I'm taking your keys. Your car's getting impounded because you can't go nowhere, or have somebody come get you. You know what I mean? None of that shit happened.
But again, that's what I'm saying. That's
right.
That's. Go ahead.
No. Go.
I was going to say, that's where it comes on the self-accountability, the self-reflection of that officer, like understanding the current times that we're in. Just not a couple of weeks ago, T.I. and the mayor of Atlanta and everybody else was out there, trying to tell people to stop, damaging property and so on and so forth. Hey, let's turn this situation now into something positive. You know what I mean? Again, I wasn't there. You know what I mean? I don't know what happened. You know what I mean? The only video that I saw of it, the video that I saw of it, he was already fighting on the ground, grabbing the taser out of the cop's hand. So I don't even know what happened prior to, because I haven't even seen that video. So at that point is, what happened during that initial confrontation. So now I can speak on personal experience where, 911 gets called. Hey, there's a guy, it's a green light. He's passed out. He fell asleep at the red light. And you walk up and you're knocking on the window, the door's locked, and then people, you have different reactions. Some people wake up and like, oh, what's going on? Then I've had people wake up and just take off driving. You know what I mean? So we don't know what happened. We don't know what happened on that initial onset when he woke up? What was said? What was the
You gotta
interaction?
watch the video. You gotta watch the video on that. Watch the body cam from the discussion and look at that.
I didn't even
So
see that
Take a
video.
look.
yeah, I haven't
Yeah.
seen it. So
Yeah,
And
I
it,
just watched it this morning.
yeah, it's just, I don't know. I think, like I said earlier, like with people, just being a collection of experiences, etc. It kind of, I think things that we see, it just makes, especially people in the Black community, want to not interact with police, or kind of, keep them at a distance. Me myself personally, I've told my son, when you interact with the police, you tell them your name, and that's it. Because you don't know what this person's agenda is. Like for myself personally, back when I was in the Marines and I was stationed in North Carolina, and I'm driving back to base, me and a couple of my friends are in my car, and I'm speeding, right? So this cop, I see him, he passed me going the opposite direction. I see him light it up and he's getting ready to make a U-turn. I don't know if it's clocked me or not, but he probably sees I'm going faster than what the flow of traffic is. But by the time he gets on me, I've already slowed down. So he pulls me over and he says, "You know what I pulled you over for?" I never answer that question, only because if I say speeding, I just admitted I was speeding, so I know my rights. So I'm like, "No, I don't know why you pulled me over." And he's like, "You don't know why I pulled you over?" And I'm like, "No, we have this, do you know, I don't know," back and forth for a little bit. And then he's like, "I pulled you over for speeding." I'm like, "I wasn't speeding." And then at this point, I guess I understand that he doesn't know if I was speeding. He's trying to get me to admit I was speeding, and I'm not going to do that. Now the conversation flips, and he starts to insult me, basically like, "You don't know how to fucking read. Are you stupid? Da 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 da." There's a white guy. It's me and my two other Black friends in the car, and I'm pissed because I don't like being talked to this way. And I'm a fucking Marine, so I'm already hot headed, and I'm trying to stay fucking calm. And he goes on this fucking tirade for a while. I don't say shit, and then he says, "Just slow it down, all right?" And I'm like, "Okay, but I wasn't speeding." I drive off. The dude follows me
Fucking
for like
dick.
10 minutes, and then he turns off and leaves. And I'm in the car like fucking furious. You know what I mean? And I feel like what was happening there is that now that we can't get me on the speeding shit, he's trying to get me pissed off, so I react. Once I react, he's gonna tell me step out of the car, and then I'm gonna be like, "For what? I didn't do shit." Now I'm resisting, and then I got this bag of charges on me over some bullshit. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that a lot of times we feel like interactions with the police come down to situations like that, where it's like, I gotta get this motherfucker. So by any means necessary, the ends justify the means. And I think that that's what helps people have these antagonistic relationships with the police.
yeah,
Did you guys see the video of the guy also in Minnesota that was just sitting down? He had like a red shirt, and these two officers approached him and said, "You look like somebody we're looking for." And they didn't ask him to ID himself,
Oh, the
nothing.
guy
With the
that was
woman
in the
Just
cop?
started to
FBI.
arrest him.
The guy that was in the FBI, EJ.
Yeah,
okay. So
Oh yeah, I
I'm
saw
yeah,
gonna
that.
give
Yeah.
you
yeah.
my take on that. Okay, and my take on that is this: what what do you expect from your law enforcement professionals to be professional, right? So,
Hmm.
at my personal opinion is that dude was wrong because he baited them. He could have ended that shit a long time ago. You know what I mean? That's just me because and how you make them look stupid is, hey, I know I'm not the guy that you're looking for that has a warrant because go in my back pocket and you can see my credentials. You see what I'm saying? But no, I'm not. You're not taking me to jail. You're not doing this. You're not doing
But what
that.
did they? But what did? How did they start that off though? That you would have done differently because they never asked him to ID himself. They
Well,
just told him he looked like somebody they were
listen,
going to arrest him.
I'm gonna tell you from experience. I've been stopped. I was out, and hey, come here. Can I help you? I'm like, yeah, you match the description of an individual that, and I go, listen, I know I'm not the guy. You can go in my back pocket. I'm not going to reach for it. Freaking, I'm LEO just like you. My creds are right there. And they go, all right, go ahead, pull them out for me. I pull them out, and they go, I'm sorry. Have a nice night. That's it. Like why?
But
Why should I
in that
say? Why should I
instance, did
say?
they?
Why should I go? No, I'm not the guy you're looking for. Trust me, I know. Trust me, I know.
But in that instance, did they ever ask him who he was though?
No, but he knows who he is. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
He
but what onus was it on them to say, hey, can you ID yourself? They from what we can see, what we all can see in that interaction. I agree with what you're saying. He did bait him, and it became viral. But it's like in that instance, they approached him and they immediately went to arrest. And not one time did you ever hear somebody say, hey, who are you?
No, you're absolutely correct on that. But again, he's out with his white friends, right? And you can see on the video his white friend goes, "Oh, this is about to be good," because his white friend knows who he is. You see what I'm saying? So my thing is like, yo, you just to me, you just made me look bad as a cop because of that. Because all you had to do was say, "Listen, I know I'm not the guy you're looking for. If you want confirmation, go in my back pocket or let me take my creds out and I'll show you that I'm not the guy you're looking for." And that shit could have been kibosh, and they would have looked even stupider because that's all they said. You look like a guy that have a warrant that that we're looking for. You know what I mean? So yeah, were the cops wrong? Because me, I'm all about information. You want to know why? You want to know why I stopped you? Because of this, this, and this, and because of this, this, and this, you're not free to leave right now. You know what I mean? And then now the ball is in your court. Why should I let you go free? Oh, okay. You're gonna let me go free because look, I have this right here that tells you I know that I'm not the guy that you're looking for. So, both sides were wrong on that one. I felt like he baited him. You know what I mean? Because again, I'm a professional, and I'm gonna hold. How can I? You guys have been asking me how are we gonna hold the racist cops, but yet
He did, right? He did bait him, right? But let's just say he didn't have creds. Let's just say he wasn't an officer, right? What onus again is it on the officer to ensure that the person they're approaching that they have the conversation? Because let's just say it was me with no creds, and I'm not the guy, but now I'm going to jail.
well,
He didn't even have a moment,
it's incumbent upon the cop to be honest. Again, honest. Give them
right?
whatever
I
information.
would have. Any guy that doesn't have a badge in that situation, they're off to jail. They're now in the joint. They're gonna be there held for who knows how long. And this would have been another fucked up, unjustful arrest because these assholes didn't ask this guy who he was. Yes, he baited him. Don't get me wrong, but I think that the minute part that we got to see is they never did their job. They're the ones in the position of power in civil servant
And
opportunity. They had to do their job because if the guy didn't have a badge, right, he'd be in jail. He'd be fucked. AP. He'd be fucked
well, again,
at least for a weekend.
So there's a lot to unpack on that one, right? And just I'm gonna get in on that one. So yeah, I think with EJ, what you're saying is they didn't ask for ID, yada yada yada. But to AP's point, I don't think they got to the point where they were placing him under arrest until he started saying, "You guys are stupid. You guys are stupid. You guys are horrible at your job," right? So again, like I say, right, and again, I tell VP all the time when we talk about how we end up in these situations and we end up on, with these viral killings and shootings and arrests, is comply. They come up to you and say, "Hey, you fit the description," because we really don't know the outcome. We don't know if he did fit the description. What if it was someone that looked just like him? And that's the reason for the approach, as opposed to us just going straight to, well, he's just a black man, so he fits the description, right? So we don't know what truly happened, and I think there's two sides to the situation, and neither one of them. It's just a lot to unpack there, and it's hard to put the full the blame on those officers. They did get worse throughout the situation, throughout the interaction, and it probably could have been approached differently on their end. But as an individual, as a black individual, regardless of how you feel towards cops, regardless of how you feel towards racism in America, you can't just act fucking wild as shit when a cop approaches you. You can't just start. At the end of the day, we're men, right? And if you're having a conversation with somebody, if you and I have a conversation, without me calling you stupid, you get defensive. right? So now imagine if I'm doing my job, right? Imagine if I'm doing my job and telling you, hey, this is part of my job, and I'm approaching you because of this, and your reply is, you're stupid, you look stupid, you're shitty at your job, you're supposed to be representing, people, you're supposed to be protecting people. Then immediately you're gonna be like, man, fuck this, I'm not dealing with this shit. You know what I'm saying? And you're gonna get defensive.
That ain't what happened in that situation.
That is what happened.
They came-
100%.
They literally approached him starting an arrest. They started the arrest and they never asked him ideas. That's my thing. And the difference is, like, the privilege here is if the fact that he's black and the fact that he's an officer is the only reason he didn't go to jail. So I guess the question begs to be asked, if I do comply in that situation, I still look like the guy, but I'm not the guy. You're already putting me in cuffs anyway. Just because you get called the asshole doesn't give you right to arrest somebody.
You're right.
Does it?
But I've been in situations where, you get an individual, I'm responding to assist. You know what I mean? Hey, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for a black male wearing a freaking Yankees cap and a white shirt. Then you go into a fucking crowd. No, and I'm being honest. Now you go into a crowd and there's 3 dudes
50
wearing.
of them.
No, but there's 3 dudes wearing
That's all
Yankee hats
black
and white
people wear.
shirts. So now, fuck, who do I stop? Well, let's stop all of them. Hey, come here. Let me talk to you for a second. You're being detained right now. We're conducting investigation. There's an individual here that we're looking for that has a warrant. Hey, do you have any ID on you? You know what I mean? Again, that's what the cop should have done.
None of that.
No.
None of that happened.
And I get that point. I do understand that point. Again, that's what I'm saying. But that's why I said they're both wrong. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, how I look at it is, I'm a professional, and if I want people to respect me and say that, you know what, that's a commendable police officer, that's a respectable law enforcement official, then I'm going to hold the media, everybody holds us accountable and holds us to a higher standard. So you know what? You're supposed to conduct yourself to that higher standard, no matter if you're on or off duty. And I felt.
But you're basically saying he had the onus on him as well as being in law enforcement. The onus was on him to say, hey, I got my creds. But what if he's just being a dick? He has a right to just be a dick and not have to do that, right?
No.
To not say to officer on first approach that's trying to arrest you, hey, I got my creds. He doesn't have to do that.
Listen,
But why wouldn't you, EJ? Why wouldn't you?
No,
why
I'm
wouldn't?
just saying,
But why wouldn't you want somebody to?
No.
Like, you're causing that. Why wouldn't you want the person to know? Hey, listen, dog, you got the wrong person. And then if you're looking from the police side standpoint, right? And this, I try to look at both sides. Is we don't know what he was fitting description for. It could have been a fucking murder, right? It could have been somebody that was armed, right? So they might have been taking the approach of, all right, let's make sure that in case this is the person, we have them in a stable situation where we're not being threatened, and then we'll identify and make sure. And if it's the wrong person, then we let the motherfucker go.
But if that happened to me, I was at a store and somebody saw the bulge on my gun, and I got stopped by security. Like, excuse, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
and
But they asked you who you were.
No, they didn't. You know what I mean? They didn't ask me. They were just like, oh, there's an individual. We received a complaint that you're armed, and we have a policy that there's no firearms in this establishment, and so we need you to stay right here for a second because law enforcement has been notified. And you know what I said? I go, well, I'm allowed to have a gun, and they're like, well, this type of establishment you can't. So I said, well, I can because I have my credentials. I'm a law enforcement officer. And
so, but in that instance, you should have led with, I can have the gun because I am a cop.
Well, no.
So you were being a dick in that instance.
Well, no, because I said I can have it in this establishment because I want him to ask me, well, why can you?
So this is the same thing that happened with this dude. Nobody asked him who the fuck he was.
Okay, but he could have put an end to that situation without having to get in their face talking about
you didn't. So could have you could have done it. You didn't have to ask them to wait for them to ask who you were. You just didn't feel like it in that moment. In this guy's instance, right? He became a dick later on. Yeah, but they were already reaching for this guy's wrist to have him get arrested before they even ever asked who he was.
You're absolutely right.
The only reason Only reason that's happening to him is because he's one male. And as officers, you're trained not only to look at what the guy's wearing, right, but physical description, right? Because if a guy gets away, he could ditch a Yankees hat, but he can't ditch being 6'4",
Of
250, right?
course.
So at no point did these guys say, "Hey, who are you? Is your name Vari P? Or are you etc." He could have then at that point said, "No, I'm not that fucking guy. I got my creds." But they went in immediately for the arrest.
Well, that's the video that I saw. But at the same token, like I said, a lot of times I've been told, hey, you respond, you detain someone. How you detain someone is your, like me. If I don't know it's you, I'll have you sit down, cross your freaking legs. I won't put handcuffs on you. But now, like you said, if I'm supposed, you match the description of a robbery suspect, you're gonna go in handcuffs until I figure out who the hell you are. But again, it's incumbent upon that police officer to take it and establish that positive rapport. Hey, listen, this is what I'm doing, okay? Don't get mad at me. This is what I'm doing. I'm going to put you in handcuffs real quick for your safety and mine. That's a staple in my language. I would always say that. Hey, and then they'd be like, what do you mean for your safety? I ain't going to do nothing to you. And I'm like,
I don't know
exactly.
that.
You know what I mean? So,
Right.
so that was always a staple of the lingo that I spoke, because I wanted you to feel safe and comfortable that this guy's just doing his job. He's gonna do his job. And if you really know that you ain't doing nothing, you know that, okay, whatever. Let me give you your respect. Now, I expect you to give me the respect until I disrespect you. You know what I mean? There's no reason for me to tell you shut the fuck up. There's no reason for me to be doing all that and escalating a situation. You know what I mean? We're trained, man. Every single cop has, we go through what they call verbal judo. You know what I mean? You're supposed to know how to utilize language to de-escalate a situation. You know what I mean? Don't use expletives, don't raise your tone of voice, agree to disagree, but again, in that situation, I just felt like, he baited them into that aggressive type of discussion back and forth. And then he's like, I want your badge. I want your name. I want this. I want that. No, you ain't going to do nothing with it. Let's just be honest. You know what I mean? You're not going to do nothing with it because the video is freaking viral now. So now you have to go report to your boss and explain what the hell happened and why you showed your ass. Because guess what? Why'd you look at it? Because it said FBI agent, right? FBI agent. Again, it's clickbait. You know what I mean? It could have been some podunk police officer. It probably wouldn't have gone as viral. But he's a Fed, so that shit gonna go viral. Just like anything else. Freaking, you can make 100 domestic violence arrests. It never makes the news. Tons of husband slaps wives. Wife slap husband.
But that's the job, though.
But
the job.
But the moment
it's the job.
but again, that's the point that I'm trying to make. The moment a police officer gets arrested for domestic violence, that shit makes the news because we're held to a higher standard. You know what I mean? So act yourself accordingly. It doesn't matter if you're out at the bar having a few drinks with your friends. Conduct yourself accordingly. You know what I mean? And that's why I felt they were both equally wrong in that situation because you're a professional. You know what I mean? Yeah, that video should have never went viral. Just like the FBI agent that we saw, that he was at some party, he did a black flip while he was dancing and his gun flew out. Come on, man. These are things that, again, it's accountability. Aside from the racist stuff, it's what I've been saying all day. Accountability. Hold yourself to a higher standard because that's what the citizens demand of me. That's what Steve, as my friend, demands of me, that I'm not going to be a fucking asshole.
But again, we gotta understand. This is, yes, that's what we would love to happen, but what does happen? And at the end of the day, you are the professional. You have the when you're on the duty, you have the responsibility to make sure that even though this person may not be doing what they're supposed to do, like you said, number of times, you got to hold yourself accountable. When I worked in child services before, everybody thinks, oh, you're a fucking social worker, you're just gonna snatch kids. You know what I mean? You walk up in somebody's house or somebody's project building and they're already beating you down, they're already, not cooperating, they're already doing all of this shit. And we don't have guns, we don't have that protection, and we're faced with this kind of shit. We still know we gotta act professionally, we gotta act accordingly, It's not going to result in, hey, I'm going to write up this file or remove your kid. If I don't see the reason to do it, fuck it. I don't want to do that shit. So, I mean, again, you're speaking from a vantage point, man, that we wish all of these guys have. But the reality that we cannot deny is that there are some racist motherfuckers that don't even want to have this mentality. And this is what we get.
But
And
I'm also here to say though that my vantage point is I'm not the only one. You know what I mean? And I want you guys to understand that there's a lot of guys that do good and they want to do good, and overall how they conduct themselves, they have no problem checking a coworker and throwing a coworker under the bus if they fucked up. And it is what it is. And I want you guys to understand that I'm an anomaly, but I'm not the only anomaly that's out there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
and
You're
I
Marine, so
definitely
you can't help but be an asshole.
you know, I definitely understand that, AP, and you know, like listening to you talk like throughout the entire conversation, like the one thing that keeps sticking out to me that you say is like I'm a professional, you know, and I get it, like hearing you say that, especially since like we're both Marines, you know what I'm saying, and like
Oh
you know
my
you're kind
God.
of no, I'm serious, Steve. Like you're taught like we're taught different. You know what I'm saying? Like when you go out, you don't only represent yourself. You represent the country. You represent the Marine Corps. You represent yourself. You know. And listening to AP, it sounds like he's taken that type of training into his law enforcement career, where he's not only representing himself or whatever, he's representing his department, his city, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. But every cop is not that. You know what I'm saying? Like some of these guys may have been in the army. So shit. So,
Damn. Damn. You dirty.
but real talk though.
Wow.
But real
See?
talk.
Wow. That's
Told you they're all
But real
assholes.
but real talk though, I'm glad that you have that level of professionalism, and I totally understand. I'm not naive enough to believe that you're the one of million cops who are professionals, but I wish that you guys were more of the rule and not the exception. And it seems like you guys are more like people who are in that vein, like you are more of the exception and not the rule.
and like throughout my career, I was a supervisor when I was at the sheriff's office. Now I'm down here, and that's why my goal has always been to conduct myself accordingly and promote through the ranks. Why? Because the only way to affect change is to, again, the Marine Corps thing. You lead by example. You know what I mean? You have to. Like I tell my bosses this, and I had it out with one of my bosses. I'm like, listen, I'm a reflection of you, and you're a reflection of me. If you're a shitbag leader, then people are gonna think I'm a shitbag fucking person. But and vice versa, if I'm a shitbag fucking just regular Joe Blow deputy, they're gonna think that my supervisor's a shitbag because they allow me to be a shitbag. So that's where we need to fucking change, and that's what I'm trying to change. And I implore that. I implore that so much at work that I got a lot of coworkers, white, black, Latinos, everything, tell me, yo, you need to promote. You need to promote because you understand, you have it. Because it's like, yo, it's one team, one fight. We're all fucking professionals here, and we have to lead by example. We have leaders and we have cops that they're just shitbags. You know what I mean? And yet, and again, it goes back to the self-reflection. When I was a trainer, I'm not going to have one of my trainees tell me I'm a shitbag. There's no fucking way. I'm not going to allow that shit. So guess what? My uniform was always clean. My shit was pressed. I still wear shirt stays till this day because of that. And shirt stays, if you guys don't know, you clip them onto your shirt, you put your foot through the bottom so your shirt stays nice and tucked and it never comes undone.
Wait a minute. You wearing a bodysuit? You be snapping your shit?
So
y'all Marines be snapping your shirts under your gooch?
So,
y'all nasty.
So again, I still wear that because you know what? I want to present myself right. You know what I mean? Because I want that when somebody initially who's never met me, at least when he initially sees me, he goes, "Oh shit, this guy's put together. He cares about him. He projects confidence. So let me go holler at him. Let me talk to him."
Away.
You have to be squared away, and that's. We have to start on the police level, on the deputy level. We can't let our supervisor. We can't wait for the supervisor to correct you. and vice versa, so it starts within, and again, that's what I meant earlier when I said, as a cop, you don't have a voice, because it's like, I'm not going to walk in the chief of police office or the sheriff's office and say, yo, you fucking up, you need to change, because you have a chain of command, you know what I mean? And somewhere along that chain of command, it's like playing telephone. You tell one thing to your sergeant. By the time the sergeant tells the lieutenant tells the captain tells the major tells the deputy chief, and it gets to the sheriff, it's you're a fuck up. And the sheriff's like, who the fuck is this guy telling me I'm a fuck up? And that's not what I was trying to say. You know what I mean? So we have to start collectively on us. And that's why I try to bring awareness to the guys I work with. Hey, man, there's no need for you to talk to that dude like that. You know what I mean? That dude's in handcuffs, So it is what it is. Talk to people no different than you would talk to them on the streets if he didn't have handcuffs on. So,
Yep.
but
So,
no.
Yeah, man. All right. So I just want to make sure that that I'm clear that they taught y'all in Marines that y'all gotta wear bodysuits. That is what I've taken from this 2-hour conversation. Like, that's fully what I've gotten from it.
Image is everything.
It's not a goddamn bodysuit.
This how y'all walk? This how y'all giving it up?
No,
We can't see, Steve.
it's basically, think of it like being like suspenders for your shirt.
That's how y'all giving it up right now?
No, definitely not.
Y'all
Definitely
just nasty. Y'all Marines is nasty.
They're basically like suspenders for your shirt. You clip them onto the bottom of your shirt, and then you like attach them to like your socks, or they have some that wrap around your feet, and it basically keeps your shirt tucked in. So, like, how when you sit down and if your shirt tucked in, it starts coming out the back or whatever. With the shirt stays, it always is pulling your shirt down to make sure it stays like nice and tucked.
I'm never attaching my shirt to my socks. I never do.
They won't never understand, Vari. It's all right.
Yeah, they don't get it.
Nasty.
They don't get it.
Y'all disgusting. That keeps your socks up and your shirt down. That's what y'all got.
Exactly.
Y'all nasty. Yo, Marines are nasty, dog. Listen.
That's crazy.
Hey, man. I think we had some good dialogue. I appreciate you joining us today.
I appreciate you having me.
We've been talking about it for a while, getting you on here, and I think this is obviously the best opportunity to do it based on what our country looks like nowadays. So, appreciate you joining us here.
It's definitely,
and appreciate you being a faithful listener, man. I know you always hit me up about all the dumb shit that Vari and EJ be saying. So,
yeah.
But everything I say is scripture, so But yeah, man. Anything before we wrap up, before we pass it to VP to close us out? Anything that you want to share from the blue side, the Blue Lives Matter side?
Nothing, man. It's just don't. My biggest thing is don't judge everybody. Don't judge everybody in the uniform based on the shitty actions of a few. There are good cops out there that are trying to make a difference and trying to impart positive change, and that gets overshadowed a lot. And we can't do that. We have to treat everybody as an individual and give them an opportunity to fail. Don't lump them into the masses. That's it.
You be safe out there, man.
Definitely
be safe out there.
Yeah,
Definitely.
for sure. Hopefully, I'll see you soon, man. Go
Definitely.
Keep the smoker going.
Yeah, gotta go wrap the ribs now.
Yeah, man. All right, man. I appreciate that. Hey, VP, if you will, if you can get us up out of here for this fine day.
First motherfucker was going for like 70% of this shit.
Seriously, VP is refreshed. He ready to start. He like, we can start it now.
Yeah, jacked up.
Well, hey, first and foremost, I just want to say thanks to AP for joining the cast today to give us a different perspective on the policing issues. It was definitely a joy to have him and to converse with him and to get a law enforcement officer's perspective on these on these topics that, you know, everybody's talking about in their houses and their, you know, chats online and Facebook and on and on and on. So it was definitely good to have him. So we definitely appreciate him taking the time on his weekend to join us for that. To all of you who listen, definitely want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to the podcast, to rock with us. And, you know, we see you in some of you guys in the comments who are watching live on the Facebook. So we definitely appreciate you taking the time. Since Steve didn't do it earlier, or he may have done it and I just wasn't here. You know, you can follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, iHeartRadio. Basically anywhere that you can get a podcast, you probably can find us there. Just search Castworthy. You can follow us on any of our social media at Castworthy, on Instagram at Castworthy_podcast. Don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, you know, help us grow this thing. And again, we always appreciate you guys for rocking with us, and we will definitely see you on the next one. Thank you. Be safe out there. Peace.
Peace. Oh, and lastly, just because Mother's Day sucked, don't make Father's Day suck for us.
Amen. Amen, brother. Amen.